Will you pray with me? Come, Spirit, come. Fall fresh upon us as we hear these ancient stories and wrestle with their call for us in our times. And may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. So friends, again, it is so good that you are here with us today. Easter Sunday is truly one of the most joyous celebrations in the life of the church. Now, whether you're joining us here in the sanctuary or online, it's good that you are with us today. So, dear ones, today we celebrate resurrection. And my guess is if we are here today, probably most of us have considered that concept of resurrection a bit. Maybe a little, maybe a lot, trying to understand what the resurrection was and what it means has been a topic of discussion and debate and conflict and contemplation for centuries, all the way back to the earliest stories of Jesus. Now, there are many different ways to understand resurrection. Some of us understand it as the physical raising of Jesus, or the metaphorical or symbolic raising of Jesus. Some of us understand resurrection as the restoration of life, symbolically or literally. Some of us understand resurrection as the act of bringing new life out of old, of beginnings emerging out of endings, sort of like what you might experience if you were hiking in the spring down at Mount St. Helens and seeing life emerging from the ash field. Or sort of like coming across a nurse tree deep in the forest and seeing how these trees in their death provide new life, new hope. Or sort of like seeing how a rainstorm can spark a desert bloom, bringing vibrancy and life where before there was seemingly none. All of those understandings of resurrection are welcome here. Now this year here at MUCC for our Lenten journey to this Easter morning, we've been working with the theme of God's abundant love. Now we witnessed that through music and dance and stories like the raising of Lazarus, where over the top abundance of love and life occurred when it was least expected. When what appeared to be the end of Lazarus' story, new and unexpected beginnings surprisingly emerged. Resurrected life in relationship with God shockingly appeared, overflowing with abundant love. In this Lent, we also witnessed abundant love through the story of Jesus' very last act of ministry, the washing of his disciples' feet. Now, in that story, we heard of Jesus on his knees, ministering tenderly and lovingly to his friends, including the one who betrays him. Now, in that story, we were reminded that the way of Jesus is of abundant love, lived out in humility, compassion, mercy, and empathy. The story of Jesus washing his disciples' feet is an example of what we must hold all of those in positions of power accountable to, and what we must offer to the world as the truthful alternative to the hateful and hate-filled narratives out there. Abundant love, lived out in humility, compassion, mercy, and empathy. Now, all that we have done here at MUCC this Lenten season has led here to this Sunday morning to celebrate resurrection. Except this year, there is a big challenge to that theme of celebration. Because for so many of us, celebration and hope may not be what we are feeling. Instead, for some of us, it may still feel like Holy Friday, a day that was for Jesus one of fear, abandonment, pain, despair, and death. For some of us, it may feel like Holy Saturday, a day that was for Jesus one of waiting, of not knowing what was to come, of endings with no vision or hope of new beginnings. The last few months for many may have felt like a whole lot of Holy Fridays and Holy Saturdays. And it can be hard to see God's abundant love rich with new life when we are witnessing the elimination of essential safety nets, the deterioration of relationships with our neighbors, or the expulsion of hundreds of thousands of people who have called this country home. It is fair to wonder, where is God? When so many are experiencing economic hardships, targeted discrimination, hate-filled rhetoric, or the elimination of what we may have thought were essential rights. It's fair to wonder, where is the God of abundant love and new life? And it's fair to wonder each year, and maybe especially this year, what? What was resurrected on that Easter morning so long ago? And perhaps more importantly, what does it have to say to us today? When so many are encased in darkness and barely breathing, still feeling like we're back on Holy Friday and Holy Saturday. Well, to answer those questions, it'd probably help to go way back to the story of Jesus' ministry and life, and remind ourselves about the expansive and gracious sort of abundant love that Jesus taught and modeled. The abundant love that Jesus taught and modeled all the way up to his death was one where the least of us is put first, always. Where all are offered healing graciously and extravagantly and welcomed at the table, especially those who aren't welcomed at other tables, like strangers and refugees and outcasts. He lived a love centered in nonviolence, embracing the path of peace, seeking justice for the oppressed in all ways, including standing with and for those on the outside, the ones without a voice. It was a love built out of radical forgiveness, compassion, empathy, and mercy. Jesus loved in the most confounding manner, on his knees, tenderly washing the feet of the one he knew would betray him. He loved in the biggest and boldest manner, calling all back to community and relationship with each other and with God. And for that, he was executed by the powers that be. not to atone for anything, not to clear any debt or wipe any slate clean. That is nothing that you will ever hear me preach. Instead, Jesus was executed because of the sort of big, bold, abundant love that he taught and modeled in his life. And it was so very threatening to the powers that be. And we know that something happened after Jesus died. When the Roman Empire executed who they believed to be the rebel leader like Jesus, almost universally, the movement died with the leader. Yet we know somehow, against all odds, Jesus' story continued in a radical new way. And his followers went out and they told and they taught and they lived Jesus' story. Those frightened followers somehow found the courage to go out and tell Jesus' story of love. So kind of like that story of Lazarus, when Jesus' story appeared to be over, somehow new life emerged in an unexpected way. When it seemed like the darkness had won, instead, somehow, there was surprising and unanticipated glorious light. Holy Friday and that time of death and despair passed away. Holy Saturday and that time of endings with no vision of hope for new beginnings came to a close. New life emerged out of Jesus' death. The powerful message of abundant love, centered in humility and compassion and mercy and forgiveness and empathy, did not die with Jesus. That call for peace and nonviolence and justice and transformation continued on. That is what was resurrected on Easter morning. That is the enduring and powerful message that we celebrate today. Abundant love will always have the final word. Now, central to Christianity's understanding of Jesus is that God's love is shown and revealed to us in Jesus' message of how to be and how to love in this world. And that looks like feeding the hungry, welcoming the stranger, clothing the naked, protecting the refugee, caring for the poor, offering gracious and lavish healing whenever possible, standing with and for the outcast, working for peace, advocating for the voiceless, and demanding justice for the oppressed. That is what Jesus taught and lived. And for that, he was accused and mocked and silenced. And yet, he refused to stop bearing witness to love and justice. And in the end, he was executed for that message. And that makes it a very dangerous message indeed. So it is fair to wonder why. Why is that message of love so threatening to the status quo? Why is it so dangerous? Because love will always, ultimately, triumph over and undo unjust systems of power. Because love has the power to topple empires. And that's why it is not just a dangerous message, but it is also a costly message. Empires and unjust systems of powers are not toppled without struggle or without opposition. Easter Sundays do not happen without Holy Fridays and Holy Saturdays. Yet regardless of the cost, abundant love is how we will overcome and turn the tide towards peace and mercy and justice. Easter Sunday reminds us that it is our job to keep showing up with that abundant love, to speak even when our voices shake. Easter Sunday reminds us that it is our job to live out Dr. Martin Luther King's call. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Because as you will hear in our next song, what we have in our hearts is so much stronger than the dark. In our hearts, we carry the enduring and resurrected message of big, bold, abundant love. Big enough to overcome any Holy Friday, any Holy Saturday. Big enough to bring down any unjust system. Big enough to topple any empire. What we have in our hearts is so much stronger than that. So my friends, as we go forth from this sacred space today, may we be the ones that offer that enduring and resurrected abundant love found within our hearts to everyone we encounter. And may we be the bringers of the light and the love that this world so desperately needs. May it be so. Amen.